because archaeology have obviously got these down as being burials, right? These, you know, are carved out of rock to put bodies inside, okay? You know what I'm going to say on it, but I will start with this. But you can see that you could basically, if you had a crane, you could lift this entire thing up off this rubble. Right, you can see under it, there's a shadow there, there's a shadow there. Go check the images if you don't believe me. But you see these rims that run all the way around it. I haven't got the image here. I've shown it in music videos where this was once metal framing. You know, look, we're basically looking at foundations here, but it seems to be like higher floors, right? You know, these could have been second, third, fourth floors, right? But you put metal framing down and then you pour concrete into it, right? So this could actually have been the ground level. Why? You know, because where these holes are is where dirt was, because you dig all this area out, then you lay your metal framing, which is this, and then you pour concrete into it, which hardens around the metal framing, yeah, which has since petrified and leached into the metal framing and just left an imprint of what it was, right? That's all that is. All this, what seems to be brickwork here, is just rubble built from later peoples building from the rubble from whatever this was, which was obviously something seriously advanced like a skyscraper, okay? This image here, archaeologists obviously, I've wrote it in here, have got this side down as being, again, burial tombs, yeah? But every single hole here is about the same, well, they are the same size, but they're, you know, facing all over the place. But when you actually track it, you can actually look at the humps and bumps on this thing, and you can see why, if this was a structure that had fallen down, they would be facing in this direction. This material is just hardened concrete, it's limestone, right? All the sand has ran out of here and gone down channels, and all the lime has hardened and made a hard surface like I've shown you. These squares here have been rebuilt by archaeologists because this was part of this structure, right? This is obviously something modern, and they are laying megatons of concrete here, and they are going to build something stories high, right? But I want you to keep an eye on what we've got here, because you're going to see something, you know, with these biblical sites I'm going to show you. I've wrote all the names in these sites in the top corners, and this is something, a site called Cathisma. Anyway, it's in Bethlehem. This is obviously a dome, modern day, and you can see these struts here. Yes, remember that shape. Everything here is rebar and concrete. 90% of this skeleton is rebar and concrete. Okay, you could not build this just with concrete, it would have fallen down a long time ago. It has to have rebar inside this concrete, okay? But those struts that I just showed you there, this is the same site in Bethlehem, and a top view, and you see these corner pieces here, these corner areas, because this was indeed some huge mega structure with some type of dome on top of it, which has since fell down on itself, and the rest of it is buried. God knows how far, and I don't know how deep, but this, you see this shape here, it's exactly what I've just shown you, right? This thing sat up, and that sat on top of this piece, and there will have been a centerpiece, and it's all just flattened down on it, right? You see these squares here? Look, you see where all these trees are planted here, yeah, and they're all spiraling out from the center. Well, I can tell you now, these trees were not planted in this pattern. They've grown in that pattern because as this entire floor, the top floor to this skyscraper fell down, these squares ended up getting, you know, more dirt, more sludge in them, and trees were able to grow in them. Everywhere you see these trees, there are huge squares there, okay? You can see them, and they all line up with the center. Remember that. This is the same place. This is one of those square holes. Okay, so it's showing you, I'm just showing you that it's going God knows how deep. They did not build all this site with little bits of limestone that they carted away from somewhere, right? I've shown you, not every single time that you see little blocks or huge blocks does it mean that they were built with blocks. Hardly anything was, and hardly anything is today. It's just where the rebar is that rusts away, and as it does, and the concrete turns into limestone as all the sand runs out of it, it turns into limestone and forms blocks, which is what you're looking at, right? It's the same site. This is the same site again, and you can basically get the picture of it. Now, archaeologists have had their hands on this at this point, and they've made it look like the top of Sacsayhuamania. You know, there's this exact same shape at the top of the hill, the mound. You know, the megalithic wall is this shape because that was indeed a raised structure, right? Exactly the same thing as what I'm showing you now. This is Gilgil Raphaim, and they have got this down, archaeologists and the megalithic world, as being some type of calendar. You see all these lines? Yeah, sometimes, you know, something to do with watching the stars and the sun and all this, but it's rubble. That's all this is. And you see all this here, right? These are more than likely rooms, you know, where rooms were, from a huge building that's completely buried to unknown depths, but on the top of it, it had a dome, okay? Or a tower that crumbles down on itself, and this is the top of it, because this is absolutely 100% the top of a dome, and I know that for a fact. It's no different to this, right? So imagine this in a flood and collapsing down on itself. What pattern do you think this would leave? Yeah, you know, and the rest of the structure, the lines further out, is exactly the same as this, okay? This thing is in Israel, and can you see these squares, like I showed you earlier, that spiral out from the center, because this again was a raised dome, something like a stadium, right? And you, I mean, it even looks like that this roof, look, I can't say this for sure, it just looks like that this was a retractable roof, okay? That's what it looks like. You can see what it stood on, and these things cross, you see it there. But the only reason why you've got this shape like that spiraling out, yeah, is because this thing was raised. That's the only reason why you have that. These were not rooms, right, for people to live in. These were floors. I don't know how many floors there were, but there were at least one, because I have got no images closer up on this site, but I can tell you what I'm looking at now. This is Göbekli Tepe. I've had to show you this again because it's the exact same thing. These squares that I'm showing you through this video, this was a floor, a first, third, fourth floor, whatever. From the pictures that I've looked at in other images, because I've only put one in this selection for you, to me it looked like there was at least 3 floors. Right, so it would have been something as big as a supermarket, yeah, with 3 floors at least. When you see the size of the mound that it's collapsed into itself, there was obviously more, but I'm just telling you what I see, because these, yeah, huge squares are what holds the floor and the tiles and the beams above, okay? So this was concrete and bars inside, and then you laid wooden beams or something on top, and it collapsed down on itself, okay? This is walling, is part of the wall. You see this here, it fell sideways and collapsed in on itself. All this rubble, all about the same size, is from rebar that's rusted away and formed blocks that look like it's been built from bricks, but it hasn't, I can guarantee you. This is the only site that's not anywhere near the biblical area, because this is in Mexico, okay? And this was a dome. I'm showing you this one once before, but this is obvious. Now, again, archaeologists have got this down as some type of calendar, right? But it's raised. You can see this, it's raised. It's sat up very, very high. You see these squares? Those squares are there because they were for floors. God knows how far it goes out and what it's sat on. This was massive, and it's just an imprint of what this thing was, okay? This is Iran. I know this isn't really like biblical site, it's just important to what I'm going to show you, because I also told you that my problem is figuring out which sites are in fact mud rock, which is what I get into a lot on this channel, because it's me that's figured all that out. You know, the Dolman videos I've made is all mud rock, isn't it? Petrified saturated wood. This site here does indeed look like it will have been a mud brick built city. You can see it all back here. You know, this will have been the villages or something like that. Rain has just flattened it all into a big pile of mud, which has now actually turned very, very hard into mud rock, adobe. So this would have been adobe brick, that's what they call it. You can see that it had an outer wall, and whatever this was, some compound, there's something in the middle. So that it will indeed, and you can see that it was in fact built from adobe brick. This is Iran again, and they call this the same thing, that it was built from the same thing, but I don't see that. It looks the same from this image, right? But I just don't see it, because there's huge squares that radiate out from the center of this, like the structures and sites I've just been showing you. It speaks to you and tells me, and any engineer of any big structures out there, that these were floors, right? That sat above something else, because that's the only reason why you make these like that, okay? So that's Iran, and this is obviously something modern, and this is the type of thing I'm getting into. So these are obviously foundations, and these are these squares that I keep showing you, right? But these are smaller than what I've been showing you, but the exact same thing. And you will in fact build them up, you know, floor after floor after floor will actually keep this shape, but this is the foundations. It's the exact same thing. Like I've told you, every single building method we have today has been learnt from archaeological finds of the past and information passed down through time. Is the real meaning for back engineering. It's not from alien craft, it's from the past, right? And this is going to be something absolutely enormous, right? And it's all this is high tense steel rebar, and there's going to be so much concrete poured into here, right? And floor after floor after floor, because this is how you have to build something like what I've been showing you from these biblical sites. When you look at the amount of rubble pile that there was, it could not have been built from mud and a little bit of wood, I can guarantee you that much. And if there's any engineers out there, they will be laughing at what I've just said, because it is so chuffing obvious. This site here is actually what put me onto this paradigm that I'm presenting right now, right? Look at the size of this rubble pile, because that's what that is. This is in fact lime. This is not mud rock. You can see the sand that's been running out under it. You know, most of this side is probably wind blasted from this side, and rains hit it a lot more. You can see the sand under it, and the lime has actually eroded. Second, right, this thing is extremely old, but you see all these squares down here. This is what I'm going to start showing you now, because if you actually look at these, what archaeologists will tell you are actually the foundations and rooms of structures. They're not. These are entire floorings. They're fallen down off the top of this thing, right? And how I know that is because if you actually look at them, they were put down in huge pieces, and they actually lie on top of each other like a Göbekli Tepe, like I've just been showing you. These huge pieces lie on top of that and on top of that, and they're lopsided, and you can see them here and falling away. The huge floors. This thing was so high, higher than any building we have built today, because to have a rubble pile this size, and most of it will have, you know, rained out and covered a wide area, and this is just hardened in a mound. It's the most unbelievable image that I have ever seen, actually. Obviously archaeologists have had their hands on this for quite some time, right? This is what they want to present to you. You know, like this town had a leader, and he lived like a king, and this is where all the poor people lived, right? But I can tell you now that these are not houses, and how I know that they're not houses is because each corner, right, runs into and touches the next corner. So they can't be houses because you wouldn't be able to walk through them, right? And they line up perfectly. They are actually floorings. Imagine a huge supermarket, right? Something like that, and it's just falling down on itself. Which is the same as this, Harats, and that's what that is. All these are images that I've never shown you before, so it's all the same thing as what I've just explained now. I saved these until last because this site is absolutely unbelievable. And again, archaeologists have had their hands on this and presented it now like some tower, like this was some tower and that all these were rooms, but they're not. I'll show you what it looked like when they first uncovered it, right? And how I know that this is another massive structure that's collapsed down in itself is because, again, all these squares are sitting on top of each other and all lopsided, right? You can't just have that wall on top of that, right, and on top of this and all lopsided. It doesn't make any sense. You can see that it's sat up, right? It's exactly how we build floors today. Imagine something massive falling down on itself, because this is exactly what it would look like. And again, it had a dome on top. This is in fact a different site. This is not that site in Bethlehem, but it's the exact same dome structure that's sat on top. Obviously, I've just told you, archaeologists have made it look like this, and I can prove it right now. So you can go check these images. Okay. But the image that proves it, the archaeologists have built it to look like how we are presented biblical sites at school. That tower there was built first. This thing is completely in rubble. If you're going to check any of these images, come and check this one, right? Because it just proves everything I'm talking about. Absolutely, there's nothing standing up here. It is just an imprint of rubble. And they have built everything, every single wall that you saw in those earlier images. They've built it themselves. Exactly the same thing as what they're doing at Göbekli Tepe and every single other site that we allow them to get their hands on. Because just look at the size of the mound of this thing. How big was this? I hope you all enjoyed that. It was broken down sections of a 27-minute video from almost 5 years ago. I decided to take a bit of a break after making that error in the video there a week ago, and decided to get the paintbrush out in this new house that we moved to 2 years back. So I will leave this link for you, and we'll get back to doing what we're doing here.